Welcome back. In this part, we are going to finish our muscles of the upper extremity muscles and structures. And by finishing, we are going to do all the posterior forearm muscles. So the muscles that we are going to attack first are superficial muscles. And in fact, almost everything we're going to do is going to be a superficial muscle. And for the majority of these superficial muscles that we're going to be starting with, they share a common origin. So if you recall, the common origin for the superficial muscles of the flexor on the anterior, that was just above the medial epicondyle. So for the extensors, we're going to go just above the lateral epicondyle. I'm going to rotate my arm. And so they're going to be coming in this direction, okay? So they'll be going this direction on this arm. So the first muscle starts just above the lateral epicondyle, and then they just kind of work their way down towards the lateral epicondyle, each one tucked under the next. So first thing I want you to realize, there's actually a flexor muscle that comes off posteriorly, and you're going, wait a second. How can a muscle back here be flexing over here? Well, it's because it comes around. And in fact, if you tense your arm, this big, thick muscle right here, so flex your elbow, flex your wrist, do you feel? So relax it and tense it. Do you feel that big, fat muscle over there? That's this muscle that's arising posteriorly from just above the lateral epicondyle. And that muscle is called the brachioradialis, okay? So here's what I mean by it arises posteriorly. On the right model, this is a posterior view. You can see because this is the back of the hand. So the lateral epicondyle is over here. So it is the highest muscle coming off. But then go to the left where you can see the palm. This is an anterior view. This is the brachioradialis going down on the thumb side. And then if you go if you go medial to that, what you will notice is there are the one pronator teres, 2 flexor carpi radialis, 3 palmaris longus, and 4 flexor carpi ulnaris superficial muscles. So there are 5 flexor muscles right there. So why is this a good thing? Because this muscle originates posteriorly. It has the innervation of every single posterior muscle, which is the radial nerve, because the radial nerve is a posterior nerve. And so posterior arm muscles, posterior forearm muscles, every single one of them is innervated by the radial nerve. So if you were to knock out all the nerves here going to the anterior forearm, but leave the radial nerve intact, you would still be able to have that elbow flexion going on. All right. So on a cadaver, posteriorly, find the highest muscle coming off on the thumb side, and that will be the brachioradialis. Anteriorly, look on the thumb side because it is coming off the lateral epicondyle as opposed to those 4 superficial muscles coming off above the medial epicondyle. So that's the brachioradialis. Also notice the name is telling you the origin, the brachium, the humerus, the insertion, the radius. All right. So now let's talk about the extensor forearm muscles. So to find these, find the brachioradialis, and then we're going to go right below it. Okay, so on the cadaver picture, there was brachioradialis. This is going to be our second one right here. The shorter one's going to be our third one. This muscle right here is going to be the 4th muscle. You can see it coming down to the wrist where it's going to be splitting, and then this other one's going to be our 5th muscle. We'll go through them one at a time. On the model, this first muscle posteriorly was brachioradialis. So now we're talking about the second muscle posteriorly. That's called the extensor carpi radialis longus, because there are going to be 2 muscles that are extensor carpi radialis muscles. In other words, 2 muscles that extend the wrist on the radial side. That's what the name is telling you. It's giving you the action in the name, so there's less memorizing. So that's the extensor carpi radialis longus. So go back and look at that bottom right picture and move just medial to that. So we had brachioradialis, we went medial to the extensor carpi radialis longus. Now we're going to go medial. And you see this little muscle is a little bit shorter. See, it's not coming from all the way up here, but it's a little bit shorter. That's the next muscle we're going to. And that muscle is called the extensor carpi radialis brevis. So this is the third muscle, okay, on the cadaver. Brachioradialis first, extensor carpi radialis longus second, extensor carpi radialis brevis third. So yes, this one also extends the wrist on the radial side. Now, both of these extensor carpi radialis muscles also have an action in common with the flexor carpi radialis muscle, and that was that radial flexion or that abduction of the wrist. So all of those muscles are just sitting right here. Whoops, I realize I'm pointing and you can't see. They're all sitting right there, and so they're all going to help do this action. Okay, so you clearly can see 1, 2, 3 coming off. Muscle number 4 is not part of that grouping, but it goes down the mid aspect of the back of the hand, and then you are going to be able to see it split into 4 tendons. So on the cadaver picture, do you clearly see the tendons going to digits 2 through 5? Because it's going to come down here and insert all the way down here, so it's going to be extending digits 2 through 5. So those MCP, PIPs, and DIPs is going to extend all of those. And then there is one big muscle that is medial to it. And so for this one, moving medial, I don't want this skinny little one that's right there, that skinny little one. Let you hold your pinky up while you're drinking tea, but that's not the one we're going to learn about, although that is a very cute muscle. We are going to go to the big one right here, which comes, and that one is the extensor carpi ulnaris. Okay. So those are the big extensor wrist hand muscles. All right, so going back, looking at the elbow area, brachioradialis, extensor carpi radialis longus, extensor carpi radialis brevis. Then we had extensor digitorum, then we skipped the muscle, and then we had extensor carpi ulnaris. And then I think you can notice that there is another muscle right over there that we haven't talked about. We will get there. So let's go back to the thumb side. On the thumb side, brachioradialis, extensor carpi radialis longus, extensor carpi radialis brevis. Then you see 2 big muscles here. We're not learning them. But right between those 2 muscles and the extensor digitorum, you can see the tendon of a muscle that is deep to the extensor digitorum. So this is showing the muscle deep to the extensor digitorum, and here is its tendon going to the thumb. So this is the one that extends the thumb, so it's called the extensor pollicis longus. And notice ICIS again. No US at the end of it. Pollicis longus. Just like we had a flexor retinaculum on the wrist on the anterior surface, we have another retinaculum on the posterior surface, but we call it an extensor retinaculum. And all the tendons are going deep to this, including the tendon to the extensor digitorum longus. Okay, so 2 other muscles. The first one is called the anconeus. So if you recall on that other model where I was showing we had the brachioradialis, we had the extensor carpi radialis longus, the extensor carpi radialis brevis, Then we had the extensor digitorum going down to the 4 digits. Then we had the extensor carpi ulnaris after skipping the little muscle that goes to the pinky finger. And I said, and we have this other muscle right over here we haven't talked about yet. Okay, that's the one we're talking about now. So you actually can see it on those models, okay? It is the muscle as you come along. It's going to be the one that is very short and on the ulnar side. And that's called the anconeus muscle. So it's going from the humerus to the ulna, and so the anconeus muscle is going to be an elbow extender along with the triceps brachii. So they're going to be synergists to each other. And the last muscle is one that can be seen if you take off the brachioradialis, the extensor carpi radialis longus, and the extensor carpi radialis brevis, and the extensor digitorum muscles, and it would be deep to those, okay? And this muscle is the supinator muscle, which, as you can expect, supinates your forearm. So in other words, holds you in anatomical position, because this is supination, whereas opposed, this is pronation. Okay. And so that is your final muscle, the supinator muscle. And with that, we are done with all the muscles of the upper extremity. Okay, so take some time with this. Look at model pictures, forearm muscles, anteriorly and posteriorly. These are the hardest muscles, and it's just because they're small and you have to count and figure out which muscle is where. And once you can do that, it's going to be a lot easier. So take a whole week, make sure you have these mastered, and I will see you again for the next video. Have a great day, and thank you for all your hard work.